Hi, I'm Liz Hirschnoff-Tolly, and welcome to the Capital Coffee Connection podcast. And on this podcast, we talk with elected leaders about their heart, their humanity, and we try to steer clear of politics and policy because our goal is to actually have conversations about the human and their character. And even though we are on virtual, we are having coffee. I have my iced coffee here, and my guest, Eric Sorensen, has his tea. I assume that's a tea.
It is with a little simple syrup in it, just take the edge off.
Good. Well, enjoy. And thank you for joining me. And Eric is Congressman Eric Sorensen from Illinois' 17th District. He is a freshman in the United States House of Representatives. That means this is his first term. And Eric is also notably the first openly gay member of Congress from Illinois, which I always say when people are there first, I'm excited that you're the first, but that you shall not be the last. And Eric is a former TV weatherman. And, you know, as a congressperson, I know he's very serious, but I also know that he has a great sense of humor. And so I thought I would just start with a little homage to Steve Carell's Brick Tamland from Anchorman and just introduce you and say, the wind is really windy.
Well, Liz, thank you for having me with you today. It's great to be with you. And, you know, the thing about the weather is it's something that we all share, you know,
right.
Unless you're going to live under a rock for the rest of your life, you know, we're all going to be underneath the atmosphere and dealing with the same stuff.
Yeah. And I think through this conversation, we'll figure out there's a lot of parallels to what you did as a weatherman and what you're doing now. And the first thing I just wanted to ask you is you have a nickname, which is Tornado. And could you talk about that a little bit? Because that's an interesting one.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So I got that nickname from my team when I was running for Congress.
Right.
And, you know, just kind of, it was a funny nickname because, you know, when they were like texting each other, like, you know, instead of has Eric made it to the event, it would be just letting you know the tornado touchdown. So that meant that I had arrived. Or
right.
The tornado is en route, right? Which meant that I was on the way to wherever I needed to be. So
I like it.
Hey, tornado, I'll still look it.
I like it. And I also think about like meteorology and like that it changes every day. And probably the work you do changes, not necessarily the subject, but the dynamics are always changing in DC and at home.
You know, it's like when I was a kid, the only thing that I wanted to be was the meteorologist. And so I had no aspirations of being in Congress until I realized that wait a minute, maybe my previous job as a meteorologist was earning the trust of the people to be their representative. That's where I am today is everything is changing. But you know what? People back home, they just need somebody that they can trust that's just going to tell it the way it is.
Yeah. And I obviously assume as a weatherman, you did your best to tell people the truth, what was happening, not just with the exact weather at that moment, but just about climate and what was happening, you know, in terms of why it's raining more or why it's raining less or different things, because people are very cognizant of what they're going through. And if you tell them something that doesn't go with that, they know you're not being straight with them.
Right. And, you know, and I had this obligation, I feel, inside of me. So working in my hometown of Rockford, Illinois, I'm the chief meteorologist at the #1 TV station. And as I am learning it, the climate is changing. We're causing this to occur, but nobody's talking about it. And I never wanted to get to a position where my kids or my grandkids would ever look and say, you know, Dad or Granddad, you were a meteorologist on TV. Why didn't everyone talk about what was going on?
Right.
I couldn't ever let it be, oh, I couldn't talk about it because our ratings. Your ratings? No, we have an obligation. And here's the thing is, people have a hard time understanding something that is going to happen.
Right.
And so when we talk about climate, you know, a lot of what is going to happen will be a product of what we are doing or a lack of what we are doing to get us, you know, the extreme weather that is
right.
And so what I was just doing was explaining that the things that were occurring out, you know, 7 of the top 10 floods on the Mississippi River here, 7 of the top 10 have happened since the Great Flood of 1993. And so when I start talking about it in that way, people have an aha moment. And then especially in my district in Western Illinois, they're farmers. They're having a hard time.
Yeah. It affects their crops. It affects everything, that their ability to make money.
Right. And then even with the technology that we have today, I mean, I'm case example where I changed career fields. Okay. But if you're a farmer and you have been on that same land for 7, 8 generations now, and you can't make a go of it, even with the technology that we have today, there are too many farmers that look at their kids and they say, I'm a failure.
Mm-hmm.
And so they can't quit their jobs. They quit their life. And so we have to understand that this is happening.
Right.
And we have to take care of them.
Yeah. And talk a little bit more about your district, because you have farmers and what other kind of people, and a little bit about the people in Illinois in general. Like, what makes Illinois special?
Maybe a couple of our greatest claims to fame. Everybody remembers the movie A League of Their Own. And so my hometown, I have a Rockford Peach shirt, by the way.
Okay.
And I think when that movie came out, that was when I started my infatuation with Madonna, but that will be
That's another story. Okay.
A different podcast. But, Rockford and Peoria, Illinois, a lot of people have heard of the phrase, will it play in Peoria? It is a bellwether for everything. Right now, I live in Moline with my partner. We live in Moline, Illinois, which is the place where a guy by the name of John Deere started a tractor company.
Yeah.
And so, that's this part of the Midwest, where we make the things that everybody uses and we grow the crops that, really kind of feed the world when you think about it.
So you're from this area. You're from Rockford, Illinois. Yeah.
So I was born and raised there, and being the weatherman on TV was the only job I ever wanted. And you know what? I got to live my childhood dream by being the meteorologist there for 11 years. And then moving from Rockford, Illinois to the next TV market over in Moline, Illinois. We're right on the Mississippi River. I worked here for so many years, and it's in the same congressional district.
Right.
I mean, I can't explain why these two places are connected in one congressional district. I can't explain, why for so many years I was sitting there on television listening to the news. I had the earpiece in my ear, and I was the number one, consumer of our product. So I knew what was going on in people's homes. And so that's where I really started to think about, where is my place?
Right.
And that's what brought me to run for Congress. And now I'm honored that I get to work there.
Yeah. It's just interesting that, first it's it's an interesting journey. People wonder, how does somebody become a congressperson? Right. And, what was their journey? And yours is unique. And I just think about that you as a child knew what you wanted, and that was to be a weatherman. And that's pretty incredible. Were you in class, in elementary school going, okay, I'm going to tell these kids what the weather is going to be? How did you know?
So I was total weather nerd, but I will tell you, and I'm going to date myself for a minute, but this is in the days before there was internet or computers or cell phones. When I was in college, in my dorm or outside of my dorm room, I had a white marker board, and it was Eric's 5-day forecast.
Oh, that is so funny.
And so there were so many of my students that lived on the floor, they would all run over and look and see what I had forecast. Or if I forgot to update it, I'd get a knock on the door, and I'd be like, what's going on? And they're like, you need to update the weather, man.
Oh my God, it's great. It's great.
So that's kind of where it started. And I'm like, okay. So still to this day, I watch the weather. I, pay attention to what's going on. But that also means that now, instead of knock on the door, at my dorm room, now I actually get text messages from members of Congress.
Okay. Yeah. Asking you the weather. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Or I'm connecting through Phoenix, or I'm connecting through Denver, and what should I do? And I'm like, hey, have your scheduler connect you through Dallas instead.
That's funny. Yeah. Well, listen, it takes a village. It takes everybody. And talk a little bit about when you were growing up, family life. What was special about, your family, and what did your parents do? Yeah.
So my dad was an aerospace engineer. And so, a lot of, for us 3 kids, we didn't really know a lot about what dad did. But I will tell you, when I was 10 years old, and we watched in my classroom in the 3rd grade, in Space Shuttle Challenger, when we watched the first teacher in space go up and that tragedy unfolded, my dad didn't come home because Sunstrand Aerospace in Rockford, Illinois, made a lot of the components that were on the space shuttle system. And the O-rings that failed, they produced some of them, but they did not produce those. And so that I kind of led me to try to figure out the why do things happen, right? And then we need an explanation of the why things happen so that people understand it. And so it wasn't just that, but I guess that's what caused me to really want to be, the meteorologist.
And your mom, was she a mom?
My mom was at home raising us and trying to raise us right so that we didn't get into trouble because one day we're going to, she didn't know, but one day, she's going to have a congressman for a son. I will tell you, there was one time though, and I think what's great about her is she pulled me out of class once, and this was in 1984, and she didn't tell me why. It was one of those things where, somebody came to the door of the classroom and said, "Eric, your mom's here." Okay. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Well, so she pulled me out of class. I said, "What gives, Mom?" And she goes, "No, come get in the car." And so we went to the Rockford Airport, and I remember hanging on this green chain link fence. Okay. And she didn't tell me what was going on, but there were other people there crowding too. And then pretty soon you could see coming in the distance and flying right over us was Air Force One. And the president was coming to town.
Yeah.
And she thought, this is a cool thing. This is a historic thing. And I need to make sure my kid experiences it, sees it.
Gives me the chills to hear that. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So, and this is 1984. So, we can figure out which president it was. President Ronald Reagan. He actually is from Northern Illinois. He was going back to his boyhood home of Dixon, Illinois. Fast forward to 2023. Okay. I'm now a member of the United States Congress, and I was able to fly on Air Force One with President Joe Biden. And when we landed at the Rockford Airport,
wow,
I was able to talk with the president. And I said, "Mr. President, if you don't, I want to be able to speak, a very quick story." And I told him that story. I said, "My mom pulled me out of class."
Yeah.
And I said, "First of all, we haven't had a president land at this airport since 1984. But if my mom would have been able to tell me the next time Air Force One lands at this airport, you're going to be on it with the president." There is no way that she would have been accurately describing what I am able to, in my capacity, do as an adult.
Yeah.
And what was really great was, the President Biden was so moved by it.
Yeah.
That, about an hour later, so we go down the stairs, there's a procession, a motorcade, I'm in like the 15th car. And so we get to Belvedere, Illinois, and, I go through my security and I go down to the stairs before the president's going to speak. And I'm like, here's the president hanging with my mom and dad. It was my mom and my dad and my partner, Sean. And I went up to him and I said, "Mr. President, I see you met my VIPs. And he goes, "I wanted to meet the woman that took you out of school in 1984 because she made good decisions."
Wow. Yeah. That's a beautiful story. I'm a little teared by that. Just the thought that your mom thought to do that. And yeah, that's what parenting is. That's what a good mommy does.
And you don't know what your kid is going to be capable of, and that's the great thing. I just taught the fifth graders on the Capitol steps from my district, from Erie, Provincetown, Illinois. And I'm like, do you guys think that Abraham Lincoln or George Washington ever thought when they were alive that they were ever going to be our ancestors? Think about that.
Yeah.
They didn't know they were important when they were alive. They just did the job the way that they were supposed to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, think about whether or not in your life you're ever going to become an ancestor.
Yeah, that's a big one. As we don't have time for that, but that's huge because it kind of makes you think about, and everybody can do it differently, but what do you do while you're here on this earth? And how do you help people? And I think, look, at the end, if you can change lives or you can help people with their lives, that's the goal of a public servant. It doesn't matter where you are or which party you are or where you come from, but that is the true role that if you go back to Jefferson and Lincoln, that they believed in and you believe in.
Yeah.
So it's special. Okay, I'm going to ask you another thing about like who influenced you. Teacher. Did you have a special teacher somewhere along the way?
Yeah. So Mrs. Powell, she was my math teacher, and she helped me because I'd struggled through math, of course, and I ended up getting a minor in math in college. But there is one thing that I remember, and it was probably in fifth or sixth grade. And I remember I got the answer right and I didn't get the credit. And she just took her red pen and scribbled it out. And I put my hand up. I said, Mrs. Powell, Mrs. Powell. I said, I got the answer right. And she came over and she looked at it. She goes, congratulations, you got the answer right. And then she walked away back to her desk. And I remember putting up my hands like, what gives?
Right.
And then I raised my hand again. I said, Mrs. Powell, you didn't give me the credit. And you know where I'm going with the story, because she said, I'm not going to give you the credit because you didn't show me your work. Okay. So ever since that, I've kind of felt like, you know what, to get the credit, it's not just getting the answer right. We have to show people what we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I do as a member of Congress. It's not so much that I make certain votes on Capitol Hill, right? I have to be in the district. I have to be in Canton, Illinois, and Freeport, and Sterling, and Bloomington to make sure that the people there know that I'm doing the work. I shouldn't just get the credit or just get a vote. I should prove to them that I'm worthy of it.
Yeah, that's a good story. I hadn't thought about that. But yes, I was also told in life that I had to show the work on my math, and I didn't. And I'm sure that's a common thread. I think, we talk about on this podcast, like, what do people have more in common than what separates us? And that might just be one of the best things I've heard about we have more in common than what separates us. So thank you for sharing that one. Talk a little bit about not growing up, but talk a little bit about your partner, Sean, because that's a lot to have a partner who is traveling back and forth to DC as a congressperson. Right. It's a huge commitment. And then I know you have 2 dogs, Petey and Oliver. So
they didn't get up when you said that.
Nope. Good. Okay. Well, they can join if they like. We had some animals join, but how does Sean balance? Because that's a lot.
Right. And so I was the meteorologist, here in Moline, Illinois. And I remember one day I'd said to him, he knew that I wasn't going to work there forever. And I said to him, you know what, honey, I think I'm going to quit my job and run for Congress. And he goes, that's nice. Let's talk about that in the morning. He was just kind of one of those that,
whatever.
Oh, okay. It's an interesting, stance. But, I remember, right over here having coffee the next Saturday, the next morning. And he's like, so what do you want to talk about? And so then I started explaining what had gone through my head. Right. And, I'll go back to like our first real date that we had. I was probably like at a Chili's or something. I don't know. I remember we are on our very first date, and then there was somebody that came up. So I was on TV for 20 years, right? So somebody came up and they're like, Eric Sorensen, how are you? Oh my God, I watch you on Channel 13. This is great. And I'm like mortified because I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This guy, I'm on I'm trying to make a good impression. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, hey, can we get a picture? So we got a picture. And then I came and I sat down. And I just looked up at him and I said, I'm really sorry that happened. And he goes, you would have been more sorry if you would have treated them like a jerk. Mm. But you treated them and they are your viewers. You wouldn't have your job if you didn't have them. And so I think he always knew that this was much more than me. It was about, who do I serve? Who are the people that need me to do this job? In some respects, in my head, I don't feel like they're that completely different.
Yeah. No, I like that. Yeah. And Sean obviously gets that that is your calling.
Yeah. What I had to do, Liz, was I had to quit my job. I wasn't allowed to be on TV, and so, my contract was coming up. I quit my job. He was, the breadwinner in the family. Mm-hmm. So now, we don't have 2 incomes. We have 1 income.
Right.
We went through all of our savings because running for Congress, you still have all of your bills and you're not taking a paycheck. Yeah. I'm like, I don't want to take a paycheck from the people that are investing in my campaign. That's not fair. So, and then getting to a point where we won a seat in Congress, right. In November, and then realizing, oh my God, I'm not going to get paid until February. What are we going to do now?
But you see, Eric, that's like the reason like this podcast is unique is like that's not something in a 2-minute piece on CNN or MSNBC you get to share. And I think that people have to realize, like,
Right.
there are those moments where you're like, oh, I have no paycheck. Oh, I mean, I talked to another one of your colleagues, and he had to drive Uber to pay for his campaign, to pay for his life during his campaign. So I get it.
It's one of those things, certainly now that I'm in Congress, if I'm in committee and I talk about a story that I hear from somebody in the grocery store when I was pushing a cart, I'm cognizant of the fact that most of the people who are in Congress, they don't do their own grocery shopping. They don't have conversations with people at a grocery store. And so after running this first campaign and now running for reelection, we need to make it so that there are more people of modest means that are running for Congress that aren't just, the wealthiest people, being able to spend their own money to tell people why they're the best.
Yeah. So, I think that is very true. And listen, representation. So people need to be represented by people that the similar stories and struggles, but also the diversity of the leadership has to represent whatever it is, but the people that are voting and the people that are sending you all to do the work.
Right.
What is the worst advice you ever received? And what is the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice that I ever received, I think it was probably to be yourself.
Yeah.
The best advice was to not come up with I don't know. I don't have an ego. I didn't come up with a personality being on TV. It's just, this is me. This is how I am.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's so many people that, whether it's Hollywood or it's in local TV news, you got to know that the person that you're seeing is a real person. For worst advice, I will give you this. I don't know if I've ever shared this. So here we go. My very first job was in Tyler, Texas. And I had a little bit of a higher voice. And at the time, we had a consultant, and this consultant said, Eric, do you smoke cigarettes? If so, you need to continue to smoke. And he's like, you need to lower your voice.
Oh, that's so funny. And his way of lowering your voice was to smoke cigarettes.
Right. I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? No. And so then I just kind of, settled my voice in, and now obviously 25 years older, but it was terrible advice. But that same guy also told me, he goes, the first half of your career in television, you're going to spend trying to look older. And the second half of your career in television, you're going to try to look younger. And for that part, he was right.
There's truth and some humor to that statement.
Right.
Yeah. On that one, we're going to now go to some rapid questions just to get to know Eric, and feel free to answer however. What is your favorite sound?
My favorite sound is the waterfall on our backyard pond.
What is your favorite color?
Blue, obviously.
Yeah. Favorite scent or smell?
Lavender.
And who is your biggest cheerleader?
My biggest cheerleader. I would say my partner, Sean, just to be able to be supportive of something that I wanted to, that he didn't know and I didn't know that I wanted to do. Basically you're just jumping out of an airplane before you even had time to put the parachute on, to know that this was ever going to be something that, we can do.
Right.
Because we had to take a lot out of our relationship. Now, I'm gone now 60-70% of the time.
I love that you talk about we, because again, you couldn't do this if Sean didn't support and wasn't your partner in this.
No. And this is such, I don't want to, bemoan. There are so many people that are working hard, but this is a very, very challenging job.
Yeah.
And, I'm not even talking about the politics of the job. It's making sure that we do what's right for our neighbors across the street. Because in this type of district, in this type of place, this isn't an overly partisan place. It's a nonpartisan place, actually, and so I've got to know that we're doing what's right for the community, for our neighbors across the street.
Yeah, that's lovely. Okay, now, most important, going to talk about food. What is your favorite ice cream flavor?
Favorite ice cream comes from a place called Whitey's Ice Cream in Moline, Illinois. Very, very historic place. It's the best ice cream in the Midwest. And they have Graham Central Station. It's delicious.
And what is Graham Central Station?
Oh my gosh. It's got some like graham crackery crust in there, and like if you really so Sean and I, we don't. There's a Whitey's ice cream like right down the street.
Yeah.
We don't go there unless there's somebody visiting us, because otherwise we would be there like every day. And so I'm like, even the manager knows. She asks me, she goes, "Eric, who's in town?" And then I have to there. So if you're really going to skip a whole meal, okay, then you go over and you get Graham
Whitey.
Central Station, and then you get key lime pie on top of that, because it's got the little bits of graham cracker in it. And forget Ben and Jerry's. The chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream was invented in Moline, Illinois.
Wow, I learned something. Thank you.
Becca Ballant, Congresswoman Ballant, and I, we're going to have an ice cream throwdown one of these days. She represents, of course, Vermont.
Yes, exactly. Okay, well, let me know how that one goes. And if you were going to have one meal, you were on a deserted island, and somebody said you get one meal is going to be served, what would that be?
Mm-hmm. It would be lasagna. Because I, it's like a weird thing. I grew up with Garfield the cat, and his favorite was lasagna. And so it was
lasagna. Okay, good. And do you work out? Do you have time for exercise?
So I have an e-bike, and I very rarely have time to get it, any time in. But I will tell you, I'm one of the probably, I would say the few, because I don't see too many people on my walk into work. But when I'm in Washington, D.C., little known fact, I either walk or take a scooter to and from the office, because it's just another thing. Personally, I'm like, I can get myself to work. There shouldn't be a necessity to have someone stop what they're doing in the office to come and drive me where I need to go.
Yeah. Okay. It's nice. And do you have specific music that you love to listen to?
So I don't listen to music enough, so I'm stuck in 1986.
Okay, who are you stuck with?
So I'm like, all right. So here's another thing. This was one of the best dates I've ever been on with Sean. There was a time where I'm just like, oh, who's coming to the Quad Cities? I'm like, it's Air Supply. I love Air Supply.
Yeah.
They're like from the early to mid 1980s. Mm-hmm. And so I surprised Sean, and I took him to an Air Supply concert. And as God is my witness, we had such a good time that we became Air Supply fanatics, and we have driven to Air Supply concerts before.
I love it. Mm-hmm. Gotta follow your passion.
I will never be all out of love.
Yeah. Okay. Good line. Gotcha. Favorite household chore?
My favorite household chore is probably, I don't know, laundry actually isn't that bad.
Okay.
We're one of those weird people that, we've actually got a laundry line outside. There's nothing better than putting your clothes out on the laundry line. I don't know. It's weird.
And superpower. What is your superpower? What's Eric Sorensen's superpower?
My superpower is probably explaining the unexplainable.
That's a good one.
Right. I mean, we could talk about, so in the subcommittee on science or on space, which I am a ranking member, I could talk about the near Earth orbit, the low Earth orbit, and what we need to do with the International Space Station to be able to deorbit in the next 7-8 years. No biggie. It's just going to cost some money, and we got to get it down safely.
That just went right over my head, just so you know. But thank you. Okay. If you and Sean were going to travel to someplace without regards to work, just for the fun of it, where would you go?
Where would we go? We actually stay here a lot, but I think if there's any place that we would probably go, it's close to home. I'm like, there's so many places around here. I'll tell you the first time that I ever went overseas was with Sean, and it was, last year, and we were able to actually fly to, and observe Israel, to be able to go on an Israel congressional delegation, and thankfully it was before October 7th, so that we could see life as it was supposed to be there.
Nice. That's a good place to visit before October 7th.
Yeah.
So I have a last question that I've asked all the leaders, and I love the answers. So the question is, what is joy? What is joy to you? What brings you joy? And if you have joy, how do you share that joy?
Joy to me it comes being content. I had to go through, a lot in my life. I personally, 2016 was a terrible year for me, medically. And so, I had different perspective coming out of 2016, where I was thankful that doctors were able to fix me, because for a while, it was not a given. But then I understood to not worry about the things that I don't have control over, and to not overly stress the things that I can't control. And so when I started doing that, I realized I had more joy in my life. I think there was just greater perspective that I didn't have before. When you're running a crazy life all of the time and you don't take any time, then it's not good.
And then how do you share your joy?
Just by being such a nice person to be around. Right, Sean? He's laughing.
I don't hear anything.
No, he's laughing in the kitchen.
Okay, good.
Sorry.
He's laughing at you or at what you said? That's a question.
I don't know if he's laughing at me or laughing with me. So I don't know, make it with that.
Okay. Well, I thank you. And look, it's been a joy to speak with you. But one of the things I was thinking about is, how with regards to the weather and, this analogy of like, we live in this world where we are, just wondering what the weather is going to be like tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I think working in DC and doing the work you do, you wonder what it's going to be like tomorrow. But I also know, one of the things that you've done is like made me smile. You made me cry a little bit about your mom there and taking you to the airport that morning. And that President Biden an hour later was like talking to your mom. I mean, that's just beautiful. Yeah. But I just think about like temperature. And, one of the things on a gray day, I'm here in New York, on a gray day, you kind of feel down. And then on a sunny day, you really feel happier. And I just think like with all that we're going through and everything that we have to deal with, just for people to get to know you and people like yourself that are actually out there making a difference. And again, we didn't talk about policy or politics, but we talked about that giving. That is sunshine. That is illumination. And I think that is what I would like from this and from all these podcasts for people to understand that like if we give of ourselves and that we share ourselves, that we actually bring sunshine, warmth. And through that, I think we can help with people who are stressed and anxious, like you said, like not stopping to express that, to enjoy the moment. So I just want to thank you because this is what you have been able to give me, and I hope others in this, conversation.
I appreciate that, Liz. I'll just end with one quick story.
Please.
The city of Rockford, Illinois, population 150,000, my hometown, just had its very first Pride Parade. It hadn't occurred until this year, and there was very heavy rain the whole time. Mm-hmm. And so, I had an umbrella up for the first, probably the first 5 blocks, and then I thought, what, screw it. I'm just going to, it is what it is, and we turned around the corner and there are so many people that were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that were there, and so one of my favorite sayings is those who say sunshine brings happiness have never danced in the rain. And we danced in the rain.
Yeah.
And it was
singing and dancing in the rain.
It was great.
Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you. This is good to be with you.
Hi, it's Liz. Please join me every Tuesday for coffee to talk about heart and humanity with our elected leaders. Remember to hit subscribe to get an alert when a new episode is live and for exclusive content. Ciao.